brought us to the most important part of the seminar. This is the thing that we so much want to say to everyone. You've got to own your vibration, because you can't cover it up with behavior or words. You got to own it. You got to admit how you're feeling, not for them. We don't mean admit it out loud to them, because it would rain down unpleasantly. We mean you've got to own how you feel. Otherwise, you don't know when you've calibrated an improvement. You got to own how you feel. Otherwise, you don't understand what's coming back to you and why. It feels like their fault. When you have the misunderstanding that there's assertion going on and that you're being criticized unfairly and unnecessarily, then you just withdraw more and more and more and more and more and more and more until you come to this place where you said to us, I don't even know what I want. And the reason you don't know what you want is because you've been afraid to let yourself want, because you've been feeling like you're being criticized because you believe a flawed premise, which is other people can assert into your experience, and it's not true. Helpful? A little bit?
So I'm being the one that's criticizing myself?
Not so much that you're criticizing yourself as you're criticizing those who you think are criticizing you. You're not saying anything because you don't trust them to like you. You don't trust them to have positive thoughts about you. And you know why? Because they don't have positive thoughts about you. And you know why? Because you don't have positive thoughts about you. In other words, it's attraction, 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 attraction. So when we say you got to own it when something comes up, you got to acknowledge how you feel. So let's take a situation. You can give us as much detail as you want. What situation has happened recently or frequently where you don't say something because you're afraid you're going to be criticized? Just give us an example. This will be helpful to everyone.
With my daughter, who's an adult and who is reacting to a situation around the death of a young 9-year-old boy in our extended family lately, and how I felt that she could have been more compassionate and reached out. And I just was very careful how I said what I wanted to say to her.
What would you have liked to have said to her?
It's not always all about you, and sometimes even though you don't want this in your energy field, you still need to show compassion to people and reach out and tell them you're thinking of them.
And what else?
You're being selfish.
And what else? Not regarding that situation, but what else? That selfish part as it relates to you.
You just reach out when it's for you and never for us or anyone else. Only when you need something from us.
And that makes you feel not important,
correct,
abandoned, not loved, not seen, not appreciated, all the things that you've done for her. And she's all wrapped up in her little world or her big world, and she doesn't reach out to you, and you feel abandoned.
Like I was a bad parent at some point. Where did I go wrong?
All right. You see, what just happened is you just owned your vibration. You let yourself own it. You let yourself feel it. And frankly, anybody would. It's a knee-jerk reaction to something like that when the premise of your life is as it has been. I'll do nice stuff for you and you do nice stuff for me, and it's all about action and behavior and things like that. And so I feel like you're not doing your fair share of giving and you're doing more than your fair share of getting. Now, let's move to the other side of the page. Trying to set that aside, ask yourself these questions. We're going to stay on that subject a little bit just to see if we can get a jump start from it. Is my daughter someone who loves more or hates more?
Loves more.
Is my daughter involved in her life in mostly positive ways or mostly negative ways?
Positive.
Is my daughter really succeeding at life or failing at life?
Succeeding.
As a parent, can I lay claim to any of the good stuff that's coming to her? Did I do something right or did I do everything wrong?
I did some things right.
Do I want to tune to my inner being or to other people?
My inner being.
Do I want my daughter to tune to her inner being or to other people?
Her inner being.
Does my daughter mostly tune to her inner being or to other people?
Her inner being.
Does my daughter jump through hoops to please all of us, or does she march to the beat of her own drum?
Oh, she's marching.
Is my daughter sort of, whether she knows it or not, acting like Abraham teaches, or
more and more?
So has anything gone wrong here, or is this happening to help me sort out some things in me? Am I trying to get her to behave like most of the world behaves, who's suffering, or do I want to revel in what she's discovered that keeps her in a joyous place? Can my daughter get sick enough to help sick people get well, and poor enough to help poor people become prosperous, and confused enough to help confused people become clear? Or do I want her to find ways to calibrate herself into her greatest strength?
I do.
And so, has something bad happened here as she stirred this up in me? Or has something good happened as she stirred something up in me? And do I want my own power and my own clarity and my stability? Do you?
I do. But how does that work with just sometimes doing the right thing?
So what's been confusing you is that when you're doing what the world has taught you is the right thing and it doesn't feel good, and your daughter is doing something different than what the world does and it does feel good, you're grappling with, is it really the right thing to feel good? Shouldn't I be suffering like everyone else? Shouldn't I be holding myself back? How dare I let myself want something? I should not let myself want something. This has been a really good conversation. Really good conversation. And with all of that, still you managed to get yourself here. It didn't feel right. You were there last week. You dragged yourself here again. You calibrated enough that you lighted up your questions so strong and your willingness so ready. And we've had a conversation that is world changing because you've tapped into how almost everybody feels in some way, you see. And you've found a way to free yourself, to allow yourself to have more fun. You see, we're not for a moment asking you not to do all you can to uplift and help others. We're not asking you to stop with your action and not help. We just want you to get your priorities straight and understand that if you don't tune into source, you got nothing to give. If you don't tune into who you really are, you're not tuned in if you're not happy, if you're not joyful. And isn't that interesting? So this is the most wonderful conversation that we've just had, because what you just explained to us, now we can explain easily back to you. Your daughter connected with source often, and you calling her selfish for it, because so much of the world doesn't understand. They think that sacrifice is the right thing to do, and suffering is the right thing to do, and joining those who suffer is the right thing to do. But here is just a little bit further. Do you know why you feel negative emotion at all? Because your inner being will not calibrate downward to your suffering. If your inner being was suffering with you, there'd be no separation between you and your inner being, and you'd have no negative emotion. Your inner being will not join you in your suffering, and yet you want your daughter to join others in their suffering. You see what we're getting at? You're getting this, you see.
I am.
There's only one way out of this, and that's to let yourself be joyful. You just got to decide it's okay to feel good and stop pinching yourself off from the things that feel good, because somebody in your little cloistered environment might scowl in their ignorance and misunderstanding of how the universe works. Such an interesting thing. So many people would say, I want to be rich, but they hate rich people. Contradiction going on. But what we're getting at is, you want to be happy, but when you see someone being happy, when you don't feel happy, it doesn't seem like they should feel happy. They should feel bad with you. And we say, you have trained one another pretty well. You've trained each other to calibrate to you because you throw fits and you're their boss, or you have some leverage over them, so you can train people to calibrate down. You can manipulate through behavior, and you can get a whole lot of people to calibrate down. But the babies are born, they're hard to train down. They're soaring, you see. And that's the way it's supposed to be for you too. There's such an influx of pure positive energy always coming in. So when you put all this together, that your inner being knows what's in your vortex and is calling you to it. And when you decide for whatever reason that you're not going to go, you don't feel very good. You don't want to adapt to not feeling good, you see. You want to adapt to feeling great. It's good to feel good. It's normal to feel good. When you feel elation, you know, when goosebumps come over you, when you have a thought that feels so good, that's you calibrating to who you really are, and the whole of you having this moment together. But when you're out here on the leading bleeding edge, where you're letting the influence of others, those people are in two groups. They're either under the influence of source or they're under the influence of something else. What group do you want to be part of? As you calibrate yourself and meditate yourself and positive aspect yourself, because you care about feeling good. You care about feeling good. You want to feel good. You sat here and said, I don't know what I want. You want to feel good. You want to feel good so much that you've done everything in your power to manipulate yourself into feeling good, and it just doesn't work that way, you see. Yeah. Nice to know, isn't it? So now what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do?
Good question.
Well, we know one thing for sure. Next time your daughter is selfishly happy, you'll be more likely to revel than criticize. You're going to be different next time in that. You're going to understand more clearly. And that's probably enough. Yeah, really good. Really good. Really good. We want you to know that sometimes those harder conversations are of the greatest value to everyone. To everyone.